Thank you, everyone. I want to thank, first of all, everyone that made this possible. You know who you are. And in fact, during a very crucial time of planning, I was away in parental leave, and a lot of people really pitched in and I think made this possible. So thank you. And thank you all for being here. I think that's the most important thing. Being here and really sort of opening up to the ideas and the problems we want to solve. So apparently I have the easy question to answer today, and I'm not sure I will manage to answer, but I will do my best. I was tempted to just open up GPT-4 Omni for those of you that saw it and just talk about that and maybe be done with it, but I might actually do the presentation after. If you haven't seen it, you can check it out after. So this might be a bit unnecessary now because we did a bingo actually, but let's go through it. So I wanted to start from, okay, set the scene a bit, like what are we discussing about? Generative AI is everywhere nowadays, and there is a lineage of things that we can trace. And of course, like artificial intelligence has been around for more than 6 decades, right? In some form or another, and it has been rediscovered over time in many different ways. That's a beautiful way history works. And there is a cascade of things that you can do. And the more you go, it used to be that it became more specific and more technology specific. Let's say you would go to machine learning, you have a lot of models working usually on tabular and time series data and trying to do very practical things. Then deep learning emerged, which was simply stacking many of those models and becoming deep. And suddenly you could do some amazing things like, oh, is this a cat or a dog? Which, if you remember the XKCD meme, is very, very impressive for some point in time. And at the end, we got generative AI, which is really putting these models into a new context, right? And enabling new capabilities. And I think as Gen AI does very, very often, it really changed the scene and maybe restructured this whole slide in a way, right? Because suddenly it's not an extension of what it was before, but it was completely rethinking of what's possible, right? And that's, I think, a message that we can try to go through these 3 days, like what is actually possible, right? And I think you will be surprised in what is actually possible when we start discussing ideas of problems. Talking about our work, there is also a cascade and a sort of like way we approach things and framework. So we start from foundations. It's very important to build your foundations. People will, I think, mention our data and the work we've done through the years to build our data sets and the way we organize data, we tag it, and the way we make sure data quality is there. But also we need building blocks, generative AI building blocks, right? And that was our first starting point. And why we did that? Because it's really not easy to predict, and it's actually impossible to predict what solutions might emerge. But if you have like mature building blocks, you can configure and reconfigure them in ways that you can enable many different applications across domains. And I will show you an example, but you can imagine this being things around data, things around deploying models in production for everyone, how to search through information, how to retrieve the appropriate thing, how to actually generate our own high quality data, which I think is very important, and other things. And at the end, we have products which is really about thinking, okay, I have this foundational technology and I've put it to use in many different solutions. Now, how can I go much deeper, right? How can I find a task, a very important self-contained task at first, and build a deep solution, right? And that's where expertise comes into play. And that's actually one of the key aspects of our strategy or the way we work, our principles, is actually embedding our domain expertise, right? And I've said this a few times, and probably some people in the audience have heard me, they're bored already of it. A few years ago, I would talk about AI in design, and I would discuss about how AI democratizes design. I was very proud of that. I felt it was the truth, and I think I was mistaken in a way. In fact, generative AI democratizes product development. I think anyone here can be a product developer, right? Why? Because you have a deep domain expertise, and if you know how to formalize that, describe it in a way that these models can leverage, you already have a solution, right? So that's I think, a key to our strategy of bringing this forward. All right, so how do we unleash the power of generative AI? So obviously our goal is to transform industries with Oracle expertise, right? And I think transforming is a key word. And I think there is an aspect of generative AI enabling things that we do, and there is a tremendous aspect of efficiency and productivity. But there is also an aspect of what new can we do? How can we rephrase and rethink of the things that we're doing? And I think that's what we're trying to do. And in my effort to answer the original question, we see how we do it. I thought I start about from what we do, how we approach the problem, and some of our solutions and experiences so far, leading to that transformation. So the services, the generative AI services, if I can call them like that we want to target, they split into this sort of connected workflow, right? Everything is connected. Everything is an ecosystem, by the way, in this space. So it starts from data engineering. Again, we have a lot of history of working with data and preparing our data and data quality. I think AI-driven data engineering is huge, right? How do we optimize data? For generative AI, again, mindset shift. How can we move from data collection and curation to data generation? How can I actually, at the source where I generate data, keep what is necessary for these models to create solutions, right? My favorite example is a Word document. If you write a report with a group of people, right, what would we send perhaps to a client? The final result, right, is a polished, very nice report that went through many iterations. What do you give to a model? Every iteration of that report, every comment and reply, every proposed change, right? That's what we should be keeping at the source. Now imagine that, how could that apply in many different tasks and areas, right? So data generation at the source is very important. And then synthetic data. I made a couple of t-shirts, for example. Tomorrow I'm wearing my synthetic data t-shirt. I will beat the drum of this. It's what everyone in the world is doing, right? If people in AI are doing one thing, it's creating synthetic data. There are models, very powerful open source and closed models out there that are exclusively trained on synthetic data generation, not on the web data, not scraped data, just generated data, right? So we need to understand how we can create robust, task-specific data sets for the things that we do, the things that we know, right? And in a way, we create that already, right? We create data every single day. How can we organize, again, collect it at the source, and then enable models to create more? And it's that scale that will help us create solutions. And then at the end, of course, once we have these two, the next step is fine-tune models, right? We want to adapt these models to our solution. GPT-4 is a powerful model. Claude is really, really powerful as well. GPT-4 Omni probably will blow your minds if you see the videos later. But still, if you ask them to do a very specific task that we want to do, they're not very good, right? They will fail very fast. They will say something that will make experts like you say, come on, you should have known this, right? So adapting to the domains is key, right? This is how we enable solutions at the end. So that's kind of like the life cycle that we are thinking. We are doing this not for everyone and not everywhere, right? We focus in what we know, our domain expertise, our clients, our industries, right? And we want to, I believe, become like the de facto sort of partner for this process. And in all of these steps, even though they are AI-related steps and generative AI processes, expertise plays a crucial role, right? There's a lot of people in the world that we might know and that are amazing at synthetic data generation, but they don't know the problems we need. We do. Injecting our expertise in all of this and bringing all this together, again, is a crucial part of things. And of course, I think we're smart enough to know that we can't really do this alone. Like, it would be crazy. I think Bill mentioned about the scale and the pace. My way of keeping pace, I have about 15 Discord communities. I follow about 100 people on Twitter. I check this every day, about 6 hours. And I wake up every morning thinking, how did I miss this? Again, 3 o'clock in the morning, unfortunately, I have to sleep. GPT-4 Omni came out, right? So you need partners, you need filters. Those communities, for me personally, are a filter. I can't really read how many papers, like 20, close to 10,000 papers. So we need partners. And that's what we're trying to create. We are trying to create partners, not vendors. It's very important in these discussions. We don't want to buy products, right? We want to create solutions for our clients and for ourselves. And to do that, we need partners. We need knowledge transfer in a way, right? We need to co-create these things, right? We are filling this puzzle slowly as we go, right? You heard about Nomic, and Andre will talk a lot about that later. It's an incredible tool that I think can enable a range of applications internally and with our clients. We are discussing with open source community, another very important aspect, and maybe an interesting thing to discuss these days. How do we have an open source branch? Like, how does the industry have an open source branch? Because it's incredibly important to connect to that talent, to that activity. So people from News will be here tomorrow to discuss, and the day after, and other partners. With model fine-tuning, we are engaging with a partner. Lamini, it's a startup that does inference and deployment. And again, it's an ecosystem, right? We are still building that ecosystem. We are still putting things together. But the whole idea is that all this becomes one integrated solution, right? That slowly creates end-to-end solutions. And understanding that you can't do all this alone is, I think, crucial, right? Understanding your complementarities and how we come together. All right, and to give an example of a foundational application, this is Recall. So Recall was our initial, I think our first or our second product, generative AI product. And the reason I call it foundational is because it does something that will forever remain part of any industrial solution, any solution in practice. That's retrieval of accurate information, search and retrieval, right? You can never go away with it because information in our work changes daily, right? It's impossible to have models that need incredible amount of compute to be trained up to date, right? The way you do it is you connect your knowledge base, and this is what we do with Recall. We connected our internal knowledge base to a large language model, and then we enable this search and retrieval over that knowledge. I think it was a great first step, again, building that foundation, and we have matured since the first day we developed it. We have matured a lot, I think, in this retrieval space, which is a space that many others are working. So there's, again, a lot of ecosystem things going on here, from open source community, from research and academics from other companies as well. It's a very powerful general application. The other reason why I consider it foundational is because it's more general. It can help with a number of queries, right? It can help with retrieving any information you give it to it, but it's not solving a deep specific problem, right? But it will be a building block of any deep specific problem. That's why it's a foundational aspect, right? A more specific solution is Bamboo, which is coming live very soon. So this is a development view. So Bamboo it extracts structured information from unstructured data. So you can imagine here, I believe it was an RFP document that had some personas inside, so detailed. And then I just ask it, can you retrieve what were the personas mentioned? Just give me their name, maybe the description, right? So this is a huge building block again, in a way, but solution already specific that will enable all these sort of end-to-end solutions because everything out there is unstructured, right? Even when you take the best care of your data, they can't be really structured. They're always in some way or form unstructured. They're messy. Maybe there's a folder of documents and inside there is something I want to extract. And Bamboo can do that. I even leave it here live for you to see how fast it will go through 26 pages. But it can do that. It can find the different personas, give you the task one of the important tasks, a description. So it's an example of a very powerful solution that you can build with a lot of foundational technology. And the last example I want to show is our RFI solution. Again, this is a very specific, task-specific problem, deep domain expertise. Although it has the very nice feature, I think, I'm not an expert, of being able to apply across almost any project. That's another aspect of value, right? That's how we can focus on the value of a solution. And what the RFI solution does is it assists our experts who were key in developing this. So our experts actually designed the workflow of how this works. How do you actually respond to RFIs? What's the information you use? How do you read the information? How do you respond? So all this went into embedding into this AI reasoning that runs. And it does a few things that are very useful that they said it was useful. For example, retrieves previous RFIs. Apparently, a lot of things are duplicated. It highlights things from the specifications and other documents that help you answer. And at the end, maybe makes a draft answer. But the important thing is it creates, and that's I think a common thread in a lot of these applications, creates the information necessary for the expert to do the task. And a key KPI that we have for this is 50% reduction in time, right? Which I think it could happen because the whole thing to run for RFI takes 1 minute. So hopefully that helps reduce the time that you need to get to the point you want to be to actually respond, right? And this is an example of deep domain expertise. We do this every day. And actually bringing the building blocks together. And one interesting thing I wanted to share about this is that there is this discussion of generative AI, what's our role? And it's a very important discussion we should have. Is it replacing expertise? Is it scaling? I really agree with the presentations before. I think it's about scalable expertise. And the people that were more invested in this work, in making this work, even more than us, was the actual domain experts helping us. That was a revelation for me. They really were invested in making this work, right? They wanted to solve the problem that they deal with every day. All right, so how do we pioneer innovation, right? How can we do it? So this slide, when I made this slide, I thought, okay, you can put this slide in maybe 1 million presentations and you've seen it elsewhere, what are these generic terms? And then I thought it's a good place to reinforce this idea that, yeah, this seems like very standard, right? Maybe something a presentation of any technology might have, but it's really how you see each of these aspects differently through the lens of a Gen AI. So I always do this exercise. How does Gen AI change the way I think about these things, right? So for example, When we talk about risk and how do we mitigate, well, again, we have the retrieval systems, right? We can create systems that retrieve information that we want at the time that we need it, right? To perhaps build processes that mitigate risk, but also maybe we can understand why things happen, right? Maybe we can build insights by that, not just retrieve like a point in time thing that we need to make a decision, but maybe we start understanding and figuring out why does risk emerge, right? What if I can go very quickly, have a discussion with a history of events that happen, right? If something can emerge, what if I can put my lessons learned and deploy them into practice through that? So it's really changing, I think, how we do things. And we can also do the same thing with design. This is my actually personal area. Before I joined Oregon, I was doing generative AI for design. And we can also do very similar thing with design. We can change our mindset from optimizing a design, which is a noble goal, it's something we should always do, to actually exploring. What if KPIs around optimization are holding us back from actually finding novel solutions, right? So can we have generative AI models help us explore design spaces? Yes, we do, because they are generative engines, right? You can actually use them to generate and generate and generate. And you can, if you're smart about it and if you inject your domain expertise, you can use them to explore design spaces. And suddenly, you can again drive insights, right? You can again like sort of have a view of what's possible and then decide what to do, right? And the other cool thing that happens, and this is something from a field called quality diversity. I won't go too much into it, I won't bore you. But they figured out that by searching the space and searching the spaces that are counterintuitive, they actually arrive at solutions that work well they would never find elsewhere. So like there is something about exploration that is not just something interesting to do, but is valuable in practice, in optimization. And of course, when we have the ability to visualize outcomes, right? When we have the ability to suddenly search across outcomes, we don't only mitigate and explore, but we can actually inject resilience. Because again, going back to design, right? What is resilience? For me, resilience is plasticity, right? And plasticity is the ability to reconfigure, right? So imagine climate change. And I go back to my previous city. I lived in Kuala Lumpur. A lot of designs there are built from the point of view that we have energy to run air conditioning, to keep us cool, right? What happens, for example, for the majority of buildings, if suddenly cooling, for example, or heating is difficult? Can we reconfigure them into something else? What happens if a pandemic hits and offices are not needed? Can they be reconfigured and repurposed into something else? You can do that after the fact, because we are smart, we can adapt. But what if you can do it while designing? What if your designs can be plastic at the source by exploring this space? I think that can be transformative as well, right? You can go to a meeting with clients, you can think of a new project from this point of view. Here's what's possible, and let's go through that. Even if we know what we want, right, or we want to do. And of course, the other part is collaboration, and this, in our industry, I think this is very interesting, and I was a computation designer before this, and I still, I guess, I don't practice it, but I feel I kind of know the space, and collaboration was always a big thing, right? Like startups started and ended around collaboration, software tools tried to tackle it, and again, I think it's how generative AI completely changes this, right? It's no longer just an environment where I can collaborate, meaning I can share some information that becomes visible to someone else at some other point. But it's suddenly an environment of humans and AI agents collaborating, discussing, like actually having a conversation, right? Or perhaps tracing a list of actions that happens and being able to intervene in what's going on. So like suddenly this collaboration, I think, is enhanced through AI. Not to mention about all the accessibility that it provides. Again, if you see Omni today, you can actually talk to an incredibly powerful assistant, right? You can discuss, or perhaps you can show, or you can sketch. So you suddenly increase the means with which you can collaborate. And I think I have a hope, again, I don't know, this might be harder than actually building solutions, that generative AI can solve design collaboration, we see. And the last part is drive engagement. And I think this new way of collaborating and this new way of being open from the start, right? Here's what's possible. I actually know. I don't need a week to go back and check. Here's what's possible. Let's explore it together. Let me open the laptop and show you, right? All these things that you can actually show practical outputs, practical solutions, things that work, I think drive engagement in a different way, right? You suddenly can sit down in a project with your clients, with your colleagues, and actually show what you mean, right? Show it working. And I think through that engagement and collaboration, you can actually get their insights, right? Because they know what they want. They really might know like deeper understanding again. Like you all have a deeper understanding of the problems you deal with than me. Like I don't have any idea. They might have a deeper understanding of their problems. So like suddenly it becomes a sort of online engagement, right? You can both or all of you sit around a solution that works and actually interact with it, right? Engage with it, collaborate. That can really drive engagement. And another thing to think about here is that everyone is doing this, right? It's not just us building an AI solution that we want others to interact with. Others are building AI solutions that they want. So like that sort of collaboration and engagement will naturally emerge because everyone is doing it. So how do we connect these different technologies? I think is a beautiful question. But this is kind of my system level principles, right? I don't know if they mean much to you, and it's something to think like they really resonate with me, right? Understanding, surprise. I think surprise is incredibly important. Like find ways to be surprised. And I don't know how easy it is, but I think this technology makes it easier, right? Plasticity, again, this idea of like things can change. Things change all the time. Like they have to be designed from the point of view of change. How do you do that? In a world that seeks stability, right? We really seek stability. How can we add robustness and resilience in our designs without necessarily telling people, yeah, you have to go crazy. You have to be constantly waiting for change, no? Maybe our designs enable that in a better way. And then emergence, like I think collaboration, the way there is a lot of emergent properties of these systems. And I think these days and going into the future, as you interact with them and intersect, I think this will emerge. Like you will see that there are things that you didn't expect. There are things I didn't expect every day that suddenly happen when I interact with them. And then interaction. So I think these are great system level principles. So where we are thinking about, okay, where do I start in creating a generative AI solution? I think this is a good point. Even if it's not so specific, but to get, I think, more specific, we also have solution level principles, right? So, okay, how do we actually build solutions? And this is the ones we sort of jotted down like very early on at the beginning even of writing thoughts, right? What's the principles around generative AI? And the first one we discussed already, right? Experts in the loop. And the way I preface this is it's not, this probably has been used like 100 times from the 60s to now, right? Expert systems, expert in the loop. It's not really about that. It's not about an expert sort of interacting with the system, just making sure they are there. But it's actually, like I said, your domain expertise, the expertise building the application. You're in the loop because you're driving the loop, right? That's what we mean. It's not like making sure we keep you in the loop while we build applications. No, it's making sure we enable you to build solutions. That's what it means. Then building bottom up, again, foundations, create solutions and then products. Foundations are incredibly important. We will never stop working on foundations. We will never stop working on retrieval. Every other day I see a new paper that comes up with a cool idea that improves retrieval. Every other day. So it's very important to build bottom up and sort of like try to build the components that help you build many different solutions. And that's another thing that I would like in these few days to sort of impart on you. And maybe some of you like it, maybe not. Think of this as a graph. A system, an ecosystem, a generative AI ecosystem is really a sort of hypergraph, right? Is a bunch of nodes. Each node does something. It might be a tool that you made, right? It might be some code that you created. It might be a software you use. It might be a person. And the way we sketch sort of like graphs or like we select nodes in that is how we create different solutions, right? So it's really like by building those little nodes, we can reconfigure them in many, many different ways. And I think generative AI uniquely enables that. Other technologies have that, but generative AI uniquely enables that because it's so plastic. And then, of course, leverage expertise. At our core, like I said, is our expertise. It is our differentiator. There's a lot of discussion in AI, if you follow, what is our moat, right? GPT-4 Omni came out today, and I don't really know the name, but I imagine a handful of startups are gone. They're gone, right? They were building voice assistants. Suddenly, OpenAI built the world's best open assistant. So what is your moat? What is your differentiator? Our expertise, right? We have built, and we will build even more generative AI expertise through all of you. But our expertise is what we do best, our core business, right? So leveraging that, that's how we build solutions. And that's what I want to get out of these days, most of your expertise. I want to understand, I want to see, how do you intersect with these tools? What's the problems that you want to solve, as Andrew was saying? And again, I talked about ecosystem solution partners. We cannot do this alone. The room is always smarter than me. any room is smarter than me, but anyways, the room is always smarter than me, and than everyone else. So we need these rooms, we need these systems, right? And at the end, insight through building, which is really just says do it. Like we really just do it, right? I was gonna put that, but I think someone else got that trademark before me. But yeah, it's really just do it. Like a lot of people, I have discussions, we have here discussions, I've had with some of you, like, how do I start? I don't really know. It doesn't matter. Like when I started, I'm gonna be very open, right? I quit my computational design job 8 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. And I started AI. That's what I said. I'm gonna do AI in design. I didn't even know how to code. I didn't know. Like I had stopped in Hello World. That's where I was. Why? Because I wasn't passionate about Hello World, but I was passionate about solving design, the issues that I had during computational design. I was passionate to do things better, right? So you just need to start. And we are here to help you, to enable you to start, right? And after that, I assure you, you will fly. Like, so I think that's kind of like our principles. Up to here was the easy part. It's easy because I can talk about things we know, we've done, right? And also I avoided answering the question, like, what does it take? Maybe some of it, okay, it does take some of these things, right? But I wanted it to be inspirational in some sense, and I don't think I managed to do it, so just as I was being open. But when I started thinking about it initially, like, and Dave suggested, okay, you will present generative AI, and I thought, okay, let's think. And I started with a blank page, right? And I got nothing. Absolutely. So I did what anyone would do. Any of us would have done. I quit, right? I said, it's okay. I do it later. I let my mind rest over the topic. No, you wouldn't do that. I did. John Cleese, I think, has a very nice creativity video. I recommend it. He says, like, you should lean against the topic, right? So I tried doing that. It didn't really work. But, okay, after a while, I went to the basics. Like, okay, what do we do, right? And I remember, like, large language models. Okay, what do we do? Prompting. And I was thinking, okay, prompting. It's a interacting with these models. We call it prompting. We actually do prompting thousands of years before language models, right? What is it? Say something to persuade. Everyone prompted, like many people prompted you today to do things, right? You were prompting to think, to explore, maybe to play a game, right? So we do that all the time. It turns out that all the things around, most of the things around large language models is actually things that we do, we know. What is AI reasoning? It's just reasoning modes, right? What is analytical reasoning, right? What is dialectical reasoning? What is counterfactual reasoning? My favorite, my personal favorite. Just expressing what could have happened. What if something happened? And I thought, okay, that's a nice inspirational way to do this, right? Maybe I do what ifs, right? Marvel did it, it looked good. Unfortunately, I'm not as good as Marvel, it turns out. It was a start. Sort of the power of what if, right? The first what if that I thought, I want to say it, I don't have a slide for it, because it's an easy way out, was what if we weren't here? It's quite powerful, right? What if we never invested in generative AI? What if in the early days, we didn't have interest, right? What if we never worked to create this exemplar? What if none of you actually were curious enough to integrate? What would happen? I think it's pretty clear, right? We would be, at some point in time, parts of what we do would become obsolete, right? We would be so far behind that we couldn't catch up. And again, to Bill's point, this is not a race with a second, right? This doesn't mean that you constantly fight and like, there are collaborations, right? But and it doesn't mean that whoever is not at the leading edge cannot still survive, but it will be, I think, categorically different how they do, right? And staying at that leading edge is very important. So that's the easy what if, right? What if we weren't here? Pretty bad. Okay, it's very good that we're here. It's amazing that we had the leadership, the insight, actual doing it, like we're going back to the principle, actually investing, actually putting in the blueprint, like just imagine, like what other, I don't know, because I don't know so deeply other people's strategies. Maybe I should have done it. Who else has that in the blueprint, in the strategy? How many didn't do it and went back to redo, I wonder, right? And missed this sort of moment in time. So it's very important. But again, that was an easy way out. So I looked for another what if, and I actually found one from the history of AI, which I think is a bit amusing, maybe inspirational. So one first what if is like, we have a worry, right? What if it just regurgitates what's there, right? Oh yeah, this is like a next token prediction. All it does is like, just repeats what it knows, right? Well, it turns out it is, but it turns out next token prediction might be the way to like actual intelligence or how we do it. And that's a different point. But so what happens there? And a very nice example there is Move 37. So I don't know how many of you know this. This is Go, right? So in 2019, I want to say, Lisa Dole was playing AlphaGo. AI system developed by DeepMind. not really a language model. And what happened is this move 37, right? And I will let you listen to the video first.
From the Google team was talking about is this kind of evaluation value.
That's a very surprising move.
I thought it was a mistake.
So what happens is AlphaGo makes this move. Everyone thinks it's a mistake. It's a terrible move from the point of view of a human. 56 moves later, these two blocks are here, and AlphaGo win. A year later, Lisa Doll, the world's best AlphaGo, actually quit Go, right? He said, okay, I cannot compete. So what happened is, from the point of view of a human, right, this was a mistake. Some sort of like regurgitation of some old mistake that the model learned, very weak. And yet it wasn't. It was something novel. It was something true. And I think that's something to really consider, and is a powerful sort of question. Like, can you be creative? Can you create something new? I think you can, because a lot of the times, right, the maximal difference is the minimal difference. If I go back to my philosophy, a very small change can be an incredible change in the world, right? And that's what happened, right? What if I think that with Gen AI, we can actually find new approaches and new strategies? In fact, I think that should be the goal, right? Again, we should drive productivity and efficiency. Absolutely, there are huge gains there, and huge gains for all of us, for our clients and for us. We should also look out for new approaches and new strategies, right? Novel insights and patterns. Yes, these machines are incredible pattern recognition machines. They find patterns that we cannot see. Good, right? We can actually use that. They can reconfigure patterns in new ways. We can use that. There are high levels of, let's say, thinking we can go with this. It's not just, oh, it found a pattern that I know. No, it found millions of patterns. So what happens if you start combining them, right? But I think people are already doing it. You saw AlphaFold 3, right? They started from proteins. Every protein known to person, like to the world, is designed. Now I think it's doing molecules. And like, there are scientific breakthroughs. Why not in engineering? And who else to do it than us, in a way, right? We are the leading edge of design and engineering, right? The other is, I think was mentioned before, what if AI makes us complacent? This is very common, right? Okay, I have a tool. It really creates things for me. What if I stop doing stuff, right? What if I don't need to do that anymore? Maybe I get worse at it, right? It's true. It does. It happens, right? This is how many times the word delve appears in papers across time, right? So the last, I think, 30 years. Do you know what happened in 2023 or like end of 2022? So that was ChatGPT. It turns out ChatGPT loves saying delve. It loves. If you go on LinkedIn, it's everywhere, right? And it's a nice word. Like, you use it. If I see it, I'm not a native speaker English, right? When I see delve, I'm like, okay, that's very good, right? It sounds really nice. I will use it. It's better than dive or something like that. And so it just so happened, So yeah, it can make us complacent, right? But I think that's an easy way out. There's a sort of quote, right? Sorry for the word, but it's kind of like what this community is using. It's an easy way out because you can do better, right? This doesn't mean that this model makes you complacent. It just means that some people might become complacent, or like we might become initial. But there are ways to sort of keep, again, working on problems that we love, that we're passionate about. We won't be complacent there, right? And we don't want to be like that, right? We don't want to be just a wall, a uniform wall. We want diversity, and we want to do more things, right? So yeah, it can be complacent, but as you saw before, it can even make a move 37. And what happened there is something incredible that I want to share, right? You see here, this is novelty index of each player in AlphaGo over time. What happened here? Move 37. AlphaGo became a program that you can play against. It turns out humans are more novel now. They play in different ways, right? The same thing happened with AlphaZero or Mu0, if you know it, from chess. Suddenly, if you go to the history of openings in chess, humans have 3, 4, like very dominated by specific openings. AlphaGo, Mu0, of course, started from everywhere, right? It just weighted everything equally. And it slowly said, okay, this is better than others, but at the end, it arrived in 10 or 12. And people playing for chess became better. So there is our interaction with these models can actually increase novelty, yes. Not because these models might be creative or novel on their own, but because us with them and our experience from them can lead us to that. I think this is an incredible chance. Okay, So what, again, we talked about efficiency, which is amazing. What if it's not the greatest strength? That's still to be seen. It might be that efficiency is, right? It might be that they are so efficient that you cannot beat that, right? Because you can see 1 minute to collect all the information you need for RFIs, right? I don't know how long that takes. Depends on the project. So here's another chart that I think is amazing from, I want to say MIT and Stanford. I will find the link after. I didn't put it here. I'm sorry. They just did a very simple experiment. They have controls and everything is a proper sort of experiment. Without GPT-4, with GPT-4. 40% better. Better than what? What do we think this is? Quality. Everyone was faster, yes, definitely. Also, the output was better. Higher quality. Going back to the RFI, because we worked on it, I really have a nice view. There were some questions there, and now I'm talking probably about things you really know. Like, there were some questions there that you really cannot answer, like no model can answer, right? I could tell from the historical RFIs, the experts were like, yeah, sure. I asked someone and they said it's okay. Like, how can the model do that, right? And here's the link for the source. But when we ran the model in these questions, it created outputs that me as an outsider, I thought this was a risk question or a safety. It suddenly started quoting what you should be careful about. Here's what the specs say about this specific thing. Just take care of these things. What if this can help the expert increase their quality of response, right? Or if they suddenly can say the same response, but actually ground it into, what if it can make us greater quality? I think it can. Like, I think while you interact with it, you will see how much easier it is to get there if you use it to leverage your expertise. Quality, not just quantity, right? And diversity. So quality, diversity, I really like that field. That's why I put this here. Quality, diversity. So diversity, not just performance, right? Don't focus on optimizing, because you will miss what other good things are out there. And then, elevate, don't replace, right? This is what we're doing. This is where we're here. We're here to elevate our practice. And yeah, what does it take? I think that our principles actually try to answer this very good. So that's what I did, right? I coped out and then I didn't do the work and I used our principles. But actually, I think we talked about all this, right? It really means believe it. Like, I have this thing that I say, I don't know if people, again, I'm not a native speaker, so sometimes when I say it, it sounds a bit weird. I say, it doesn't matter what you do, what you say. I don't care what you say. And what I mean there is, like, I really care what you do. That's what I say. Like, words mean little. Like, what do you actually do? So I think that we actually do it. That's amazing. We are here to do it. I think that's great. That's what it takes, right? Actually do it. And then be playful with serious intent. You have the ability to be playful these days. I can be honest. I had the space to be playful all this month. My team had the space to be playful, right? We actually, to have that space, someone has to give that space, right? There has to be support, right? So, and then you have to be playful, actually. You have to be like, okay, what new can I do? What's the weird thing that can work, right? So really be playful. Then be nimble. Yeah, you need to be nimble, right? You need to move around. Like we talked about early on, like kind of joke, like kind of like a startup attitude, right? Not really try to get funding from VCs, but like really be agile, right? And agile, not at the process. The agile process is very good. We follow it. But agile in a mindset, like, okay, what's new? Literally, we now have a group of tasks in our project, which is like applied R&D. You know what those are? Literally papers. Every log will be a paper that we implement in practice. You need to be nimble. You need to continue to see what's out there. And then something, I don't know how hard that is for software developers, be ready to throw away what you did before because it's obsolete, right? And then master your craft. That's something you all do, right? You're masters of your craft. That's why we're here. And, we try to do it with Gen AI as well. We're not just using tools off the shelf. We're not just buying things. We really want to partner. We really want to create our expertise the same way you have created your craft and expertise. And then create a legacy. And I think, again, what is a legacy, right? I think for me is really doing something different in the world. That's what I see as a legacy, right? So I see this as an immense opportunity to create a legacy by changing the world with this technology, right? The way you're changing the world with your work already and you're transforming what's around you, maybe we can do it in better ways, in new ways with generative AI. So yeah, that's all I had. Thank you for listening.